A DJ is murdered, but the real story begins after the bullet stopped. How did one hit expose a political network stretching into the state? If what's alleged is true, it could once again shake the foundations of our country. Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX, the Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh experience. And if you're new around here, I'm Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, help get us to 300,000 subscribers. Oh, and by the way, SMWX is also available on all your favorite podcasting streaming apps. Now, have you seen, it feels like we say this every day with South Africa, have you seen the latest news? The DJ Sumbody case has set the nation shaking because it traces links not only to alleged figures in the underworld, but also ties right back to senior political figures and even General Mkhwanazi's explosive allegations. How, you might ask? Well, sit back, we'll help you explore this in this episode. In the first part, I'm going to look at some of the recent revelations that have come out about KT Molefe and DJ Sumbody. DJ Sumbody, of course, was the killed, very famous DJ who has really excited the imagination of the nation in terms of who was responsible for this hit. Then after that, we're going to look at exactly how this links back to Mkhwanazi's explosive allegations of criminal syndicates having influence over government. And then finally, we'll look at Cyril Ramaphosa's continued response to Mkhwanazi's allegations, the firing of the Higher Education Minister, Nobuhle Nkabane, as well as a new motion of no confidence against President Ramaphosa brought by MK Party. So, DJ Sumbody was a famous DJ who was killed, and of course, very sadly, the question is, who killed him? And this has been raging on for a long time in South Africa. We've had a string of high-profile celebrity murders, and up to this point, there hasn't been much clarity as to who was involved. Now, today, we got a big new development in that story, in that we heard that a person by the name of KT Molefe was arrested last night as I shoot this in connection with the murder of DJ Sumbody. He's not accused of actually pulling the trigger, but of masterminding a murder with 3 people who are actually there to execute on his instruction. These, at least, are the allegations. So, very interesting in and of itself, but it turns out that KT Molefe is not just any old person, but someone who, in some ways, is related to Kat Matlala, who is the person that General Mkhwanazi said was influencing Senzo Meyiwa. So let's try and untangle and unpack this. Now, we have to start in April 2024, where someone by the name of Armand Swart was murdered in a hit-style killing. Soon after that, KT Molefe was charged with Swart's murder. Again, the same people who were involved in killing DJ Sumbody were involved in this murder of Swart. So after Swart's killing, police recovered 4 guns, and ballistics tests showed that they were the same firearms used in DJ Sumbody's murder. Also matched the attempted hit on the influencer Teboho Tobejane. Now remember, Kat Matlala is currently facing an attempted murder charge for this attempted murder on what some people have speculated was his then girlfriend, Teboho Tobejane. So effectively, we have these 3 murders, or at least attempted murders. We've got Armand Swart, DJ Sumbody, and Teboho Tobejane. Now here's where things get scary and interesting. Same murder weapons and same people responsible in terms of the actual hitmen. And 2 different masterminds. For DJ Sumbody and Swart, the allegation is Molefe, KT Molefe, whereas for Tobejane, the allegation is Kat Matlala. But even though they're two different masterminds, similar weapons, and the same hitmen. So clearly there's this group of hitmen who can be ordered to kill celebrities, who knows who else, and different people are ordering them to kill these celebrities. And these two different people are both linked back to the explosive allegations of General Mkhwanazi. So the remaining question is there a relationship between KT Molefe and Kat Matlala, who used the same weapons and hitmen, and what is the nature of that relationship? That's something we don't know at this point, because things are still early. These are all still allegations, and we're far from proof beyond a reasonable doubt. However, it is interesting that these figures who General Mkhwanazi outed, it's as if the web is starting to connect all of these different figures in a way that in some ways he predicted. Random and weird side tangent. When KT Matlala was arrested last night as I shoot this, he was there with Kenny Kunene at his house. Kenny Kunene being the MMC for transport in Johannesburg. Now, what on earth was the MMC for transport in Johannesburg, a local government official, doing at the house of this person who was out on bail for one murder and has now been arrested for yet a second murder? This is deeply troubling, deeply worrying, and enough to end a political career. Now, Kenny Kunene, realizing that this news had broken, has rushed to various news stations to try and explain his presence there. And I want you to take a look at his version, which seems to be stretching the bounds of credulity.
Just given, based on the reports that have emerged, that you were at the home of Mr. Katiso Molefe when the arrest was effected, is this in fact the case?
Yes, it is true that I was at the house of Mr. Molefe.
Mm-hmm. And what was the nature of the visit? Are you guys perhaps close friends?
No, we are not friends. I think if you look at my online newspaper, it hasn't been that active, and I decided to put together some young people that can then run with it, that are interested in the media space, and to resuscitate it, obviously, and in its own tradition. African News Global has always focused on exclusive stories. So they wanted to do an exclusive story, and Mr. Molefe was a person where there was an opportunity to do a story with him. Remember that he has not spoken publicly since his arrest and whilst he was on bail. And so I facilitated with somebody that I know that knows Mr. Molefe. And Mr. Molefe agreed to do the interview, and the meeting was facilitated.
So you were there essentially as the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, facilitating an interview exclusively?
No, not as editor-in-chief. Mm-hmm. I am handing the platform as the owner to these young people because I don't have time for it with the work that I'm doing in the city.
Right. So, I mean, there are a lot of problems with this account. Firstly, this idea that Kunene was there because he had this old newspaper and he was introducing Molefe to journalists because he was handing over the newspaper to these journalists who were then going to conduct a story. I mean, is Uber not available? Like, what's going? Why did he have to drive the journalists to this person's house? I mean, as my producer said, I know he's the MMC for transport, but it doesn't mean you have to like literally physically transport people to where they need to go. Secondly, like, it would be a huge conflict of interest to be a sitting politician on the one hand and trying to facilitate an interview for a media publication on the other, because the media's role is to keep politicians accountable. You can't have politicians who are also media owners double dealing at the same time, trying to send their journalists for interviews while they are the people who should be interviewed at the same time. So that also doesn't make sense. We've researched whether Africa News Global is even still registered, and judging by CIPC records, I think we're the first people to say this, it seems to have been deregistered in February 2024, at least on the face of it. So 2025, I apologize. So, I mean, that needs to be clarified in future interviews. Is it actually a registered entity? In which case, if it's not registered, then why was he ferrying these journalists to the house of this alleged criminal mastermind for a deregistered media entity? And then finally, there's just a lot that needs to be clarified, because he said someone he knows facilitated the meeting with Molefe. Well, who? Who does he know? Was it someone in his office? Was it a friend? Do they have mutual friends? What's the nature of this friendship or mutual relationship that they have? Who is this person? How are they related to Molefe? How are they related to Kunene? So this is serious stuff, people. Like, General Mkhwanazi has already lifted the lid on potential links between senior politicians and criminal underworld figures. And now we have another senior Joburg politician at the house of a criminal underworld figure, allegedly, who was there during an arrest and doesn't seem to have a coherent reason why he was there. So sometimes you just think politicians are they either think it's a big joke or that the public is just stupid. But at the very least, we need a much more coherent explanation as to why Kenny Kunene was there at the time of this arrest.
Ready to take your podcast to the next level? At Ayeye Studios, you can film, edit, and release your podcast all in one place. From crisp visuals to clean sound, we've got you covered, and we can even distribute your podcast on YouTube and other platforms. The best part? It's brought to you by the same team that brings you SMWX quality. Are you ready to take your podcast to the next level? Welcome to Ayeye Studios.
Cool. And this story gets more and more interesting, because in addition to all of these links, what we heard from SAPS spokesperson, Brigadier Athleta Mate, is that these murder weapons have been linked not only to the cases that we've spoken about, but are linked to potentially at least 10 cases of high-profile figures. I want you to take a look at this clip of Brigadier Mate explaining this.
I know that the same firearm that killed Armand Swart is the same firearm that killed DJ Sumbody and his two bodyguards. And we now know that the same suspects that were arrested in the Armand Swart case are also the same suspects that are arrested in DJ Sumbody. What is also interesting is that the two hitmen in this particular case are also linked to the Nobuhle Nkabane attempted murder. So all these three cases are linked somehow. But really well done to the team on behalf of the National Commissioner of the SAPS, General Fani Masemola. Well done to the team that has been hard at work. This is really a culmination of hard work and dedication. And we are hoping that these arrests will provide the necessary closure to families as well as the fans of the late DJ, as well as the families of his bodyguards and so on. So the work continues, as I've indicated, that these firearms are being linked to at least 10 high-profile cases, most of them hits, attempted murder cases, as well as murder cases.
Right, so there you have it. And I guess another question that emerges from all of this is, who are the other people in this at least 10-person web of high-profile cases of murder and attempted murder? By high-profile, what is meant? Is it celebrities? And so we need to get clarity, and hopefully in the fullness of time, we will understand who all of these figures are. So to link back to Mkhwanazi, who comes out at this bombshell press briefing and says there are high-profile figures influencing political figures, and the way they were influencing, in Mkhwanazi's words, were there was this political killings task team in the police which was making a lot of progress in uncovering this spider web of criminal masterminds. And because it was doing too well, it got shut down, according to his version, by Minister Senzo Mchunu. Now, Mchunu apparently was being influenced by Vusimuzi Kat Matlala, who is part of this because of what we have just explained earlier, the different firearms and hitmen who are linked to these different assassinations and attempted murders. So it all traces in some ways back to Mkhwanazi, and in some ways what he said seems to be being uncovered. We also know that the political killings task team was responsible for uncovering these links in terms of the KT Molefe cases now as well. Right, so we have that. Now, of course, this has been a serious headache for President Cyril Ramaphosa because he has really been criticized like I've never seen before in terms of the Commission of Inquiry, which he started, the National Dialogue as well, which is not going down particularly well, but also just his treating Minister Senzo Mchunu, former, well, is he a minister, is he not? Special leave Minister Senzo Mchunu with kid gloves and not adopting a punitive approach to him. Now, in what was probably, I would say, the worst week so far of Ramaphosa's presidency, last week and possibly the week before as well, he moved in some ways to shift the media narrative and fired his higher education minister, Nobuhle Nkabane, who had been under suspicion of irregularly appointing SETA board chairs and also contemptuously dismissing or evading parliament. Now, hey, I've always said that I'm here for accountability on this channel, and when someone is held accountable, I think that's a good thing. So kudos to President Ramaphosa for finally acting on that particular issue. But the question is, was he pushed to act, or was he acting out of his own volition? Because we know two things. MK had been preparing a motion of no confidence on the one hand, and on the other hand, which is probably the more proximate cause, the DA had already threatened not to support budget votes of compromised ministers. And we know that the higher education budget vote was coming up very soon. Now, if the DA didn't vote for that higher education budget, it wouldn't only have affected the higher education budget, but there are some legal interpretations which say that if at least one ministry is unable to pass its budget vote, that can have a cascading effect onto the legitimacy of the entire budget. So we could have a whole other budget crisis if ministries are unable to pass their budget votes, or these departmental budget votes that are currently going through Parliament. So Ramaphosa must have realized that there was a serious problem if the DA was going to vote against an ANC minister because they don't have a majority in and of themselves. So he pulled the trigger and he's acted. He's appointed Buti Manamela, who was the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, someone who's been in the space for a very long time. And we await his next moves and what he will do in the sector. And yeah, we should have him on the show, in fact. So Buti Manamela, if your people are watching or listening, get in touch and it'd be interesting to interview you to see what your plans are for the higher education ministry. But at the same time, Ramaphosa didn't decide to dip out of the ANC. It's another ANC minister. He then appointed a new deputy minister, also from the ANC. So this might have been seen as an opportunity to refill a deputy ministry, even a ministry with a DA minister or another GNU party minister, but he decided against that, further cementing the dominance of the ANC over this cabinet. In addition, he may have solved something of a headache within the tripartite alliance because the SACP has been very antsy and critical of the president. Manamela, as a senior SACP figure, is now also a minister. So that may have been a move to placate the SACP within the alliance, who have already started contesting elections against the ANC. Last week they contested the Sishego election, which was won by the EFF. But it'll give the ANC a lot of concern if the SACP is challenging them in the lead up to a local government election where the ANC cannot afford to lose another vote. And by the same token, today it was announced that the MK party will be fielding a motion of no confidence against the president. Now, in a letter to the Speaker, Dr. John Hlophe said that they were fielding this motion because they believe that the country is spiraling out of control under Ramaphosa's leadership. They cited corruption in the criminal justice system and also some of the questions that have been plaguing President Ramaphosa, from the sealed bank statements around his 2017 ANC electoral campaign and the Phala saga, over which the population has no clarity. Now, very interesting here in terms of the parliamentary calculus, because firstly, let's take a look at what happens with these motions of no confidence. According to the rules of the National Assembly, once a motion is submitted, and it can be submitted from anyone within the National Assembly, it's submitted via this form and it gets processed through to the Speaker, and then it's up to the Speaker. We also know the ANC Speaker then decides on when this will be programmed. So the Speaker then gives it to the programming committee. It's under the Speaker's discretion about when it will be programmed. And in previous motions, it's been as short as a few days. So like it could be tabled on the 1st of March and then the motion happens on the 8th of March. But there's no actual time frame. So it's really in the discretion of the Speaker exactly how urgent she believes it will be. Now, when a motion is tabled, if it fails, then you can't have another motion in that session of Parliament. So we've got an interesting situation here, because you've got the MK party, which is sitting on 14%. You've also got the DA, which has threatened a motion of no confidence because they say Ramaphosa isn't acting against errant ministers. So the real question is, will the DA support this motion or will they protect the president? Now, I suspect they'll protect the president, but in doing so, they will undermine their earlier attack on the president, and their earlier threat. In some ways, the MK has kind of jumped ahead of the DA on their threat of a motion and tabled this motion. So the DA is going to be responsible, if they protect the president, for reinstalling and keeping this government in place. And that might place them on the back foot when they're asked questions about, why they criticize the GNU so much, because you can't keep criticizing the GNU on the one hand, but then also protect it in Parliament and guarantee its survival. On the other hand, it would be quite a thing if the DA and the MK and EFF were to vote against each other against the president. So what the MK, I think, is doing here is just forcing these political actors to show their cards, show their true colors within the GNU. Now, will we see any breakaways from the GNU with this motion? I presume the Speaker will allow the motion to be tabled. And then in terms of secret ballot, would there be a secret ballot potentially in motions of no confidence against the president that is allowed? So that would also be quite fascinating. So I think it's a question of waiting and seeing where this motion goes and what the calculus will be around where different people vote. Now, if something happens in the intervening period to weaken President Ramaphosa, then the pressure may be on the DA to vote with the MK. But right now, I see it as a warning shot, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in Parliament. So we'll keep an eye on it on the channel. I hope you keep an eye on this channel. Thank you for an incredible 2 weeks. It feels like this channel is just like exploding. We've crossed 250,000 subscribers. We did more than 1 million views just last week alone. Watch our Prince Mashele episode, which I think is on nearly 700,000 views now. Look out for an interview with Mr. Malesela Defo coming soon on this channel. Believe me. Whew, it was lit. It was interesting. And keep liking, sharing, and subscribing. One of our taglines is spread the fire. And what that really means is this channel grows by word of mouth. So when we start the episode and we say spread the fire, it's a reminder for you to spread it in your community WhatsApp group. I know you've seen lots of clips circulating from this channel in your WhatsApp groups. Thank you for spreading the fire. Share it with that family member with whom you always talk about politics. Share it with that friend group where you're always discussing issues in the country. Table it for debate. and keep spreading the fire. This channel always grows by word of mouth. It has grown organically, and it feels like it's starting to snowball. Our next milestone is 300,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So see if you can help us getting there by subscribing and telling a friend to subscribe. By the way, check out your podcast platforms. If you like to listen rather than watch, then SMWX is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcasting platforms as well. Subscribe there too, just for the fun of subscribing in lots of places. Thank you for watching. Really treasure your attention and support of this channel, and keep it locked on SMWX, the Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh Experience. Aye.